Howdy my totally tubular gamers, we're back with you guessed it, another video. Thanks for coming back to the channel. If you're new here, maybe stick around for a while. I got a fun list for you today. Today we're going to be talking about the longest games I've ever finished. You know, as time goes on and I look back over the years, I go, wow, I've spent a lot of my life playing video games, a majority of my life playing video games. And so I really asked myself, well, what are some of the longest video games you've finished? You've played so many games, what are some of the longest ones? Nowadays it feels like every game is stupid long. If it's an RPG, it has to be 40, 50, 60, sometimes 100 hours long, and at times it feels like a bunch of these games are the longest games ever. And so today I'm here to talk about the longest games I've ever finished. I've looked back through all of the games I've finished on Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, GameCube, Switch, you name it. I have looked back at all of the games I've finished and I have pointed out the 10 longest games that I've ever finished. Now, it is very much worth noting that everyone plays through games differently. Some people might finish a game super quick compared to how others finish a game. Some people want to do every single side quest in the game before they finish the game. Some people just want to do the golden path and only play the main story. It very much depends on the player, but this is just my experience, how I played through these games, and I didn't 100% these games. It was just me starting the game and getting to the credits and going, wow, like 100 hours went by. And you know, you might have finished these games way faster than me. There's plenty of games I'm sure I've finished way faster than you. We all play through games differently. This is just my list based off of my personal experiences. I'd love to know down below what some of the longest games you've ever finished are and maybe why, and I'm gonna try to do the same. I can't give you exact hours when it comes to these games as I do AFK a bit. I mean, I gotta go get my Wendy's spicy nuggets at some point and I usually just leave the game on, but I can at least give you like a ballpark estimate. For educational purposes, I will read the how long to beat to see what other people are saying, but I will always just say it's not the most accurate since again, everybody has their own playstyle. I'm also only looking at the games that I've actually, finished. So if you say I'm missing a game or I didn't include a certain game, there's a good chance I just actually haven't finished it. And multiplayer games are not going to be on here. You're not going to find Monster Hunter even though there's like 1,000 hours worth of content there. And so with all of that in mind, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Let me know down below how you're feeling or what some of the longest games you've ever played are. Any support is truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you so much. And before we begin, I do actually have a shout out to give, and that is to today's sponsor during today's video. And our first game is a goodie. It is Dragon Quest XI. Now, Dragon Quest doesn't really need all that much of an introduction. One of the longest running RPG franchises of them all. It's been around a very long time. And something that's been pretty consistent with the series is the length. Most of these games, really almost every Dragon Quest game is quite long. Outside of a few spin-offs and maybe like the first couple, every Dragon Quest game has a decent length to it. This game though, it's a pretty big game. It's not the biggest Dragon Quest game. I've heard that Dragon Quest VII is the longest. I have yet to play 7. I'm honestly a little bit intimidated. I was on Dragon Quest XI for a good month or two, and I really wasn't playing like anything else. I was just playing Dragon Quest XI. I really did enjoy this game. It took me well over 60 hours to finish this game, and I didn't even really do any of the side missions or side content. I did a few and I didn't even touch the end game, but the golden path for this game is actually quite long. If you just stick to the main story, according to how long to beat, it'll take you 56.5 hours. Yeah, I'd say it takes around 60 hours just for the main story alone. It's a very long, epic tale, but if you do any of the side activities, you're really going to add a lot to this game. And then there's all the end game content. If you want to do everything in this game, you're looking at well over 100 hours, but it very much is worth it. It is one of those big, epic, long RPGs with an amazing story, excellent gameplay, a swell presentation, and it really just all comes together in such a satisfying way. I mean, I do not regret at all the amount of time I played with this game, and I kind of wish I played more of it. I wish I did more of the side content. There was also the re-release, which adds even more and more side content. I played the original game many years ago. That re-release was not out yet. I kind of want to go back to try the re-release and see all the new stuff, but I'm gonna be there for like 100 hours. I mean, I kind of want to play the other Dragon Quest games. I've been playing through 8 for quite a while now. I've really been taking my time with that one, and it's getting up there. I'm at like 40 or 50 hours, and I don't think I'm all that close to being done with it. It'll probably be even longer than Dragon Quest XI. Dragon Quest games are just big, long, and epic. You know, the mainline games don't come very often, but when one shows up, it's got a really long-lasting impact like this. Hopefully we see Dragon Quest 12 soon, and it's probably going to be just as long as 11, if not even longer, but I'll absolutely be there for it. And so our next game might not be one you expect, and that is Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. I very much remember when this game came out in 2015, same day as Mad Max, and I played this game for like 2 months. I was on this game quite a long time. It took me over 60 hours to beat. I did as much side content as I possibly could, and I even interacted a little bit with the multiplayer. Like, I really enjoyed this game. I just loved how many different ways you could approach all of the missions. I love the variety of missions, and sure, there's a bunch of repeated shit in here, but man, I really did enjoy this game. It has some of the best gameplay of the entire Metal Gear franchise. According to How Long to Beat, if you just do the golden path, you can finish the game in 45.5 hours, but I am not so certain that most people will finish the game in that time. I think it's going to take them a bit longer. I'd say anywhere from 50 to 60 hours. This is easily the biggest Metal Gear game of them all. This game is like almost all the Metal Gear Solids combined when it comes to the length, and I really enjoyed it. Again, I had so much fun with these missions. There's so many different ways to like go about almost every mission. The open world is actually well designed. I had a lot of fun with this one. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I know some people prefer the tighter, shorter, more linear Metal Gear Solid experiences, and fair enough, they are better in certain aspects, but man, when it comes to the gameplay, I just don't think it gets much better than Metal Gear Solid 5 for the series. And that gameplay better be hella good, because you're going to be on this game a really long time. Like, there's like 50 main missions you have to do, and then there's a bunch of other side things you can do. If you want to get involved with the multiplayer and the nukes and all that shit, you'll be playing this game a long time. According to How Long to Beat, if you want to do everything, like absolutely everything, I'm guessing even the trophies, you're looking at 160 hours. Yeah, that's pretty loony, especially taking into account that this is a Metal Gear Solid game. It is not like some big epic long RPG like Dragon Quest or some of the other games you're going to see on here. This is a stealth action game, and it's one of the longest stealth action games, if not the longest stealth game ever made, which is pretty impressive. And I think what's crazier is that this game was supposed to be longer. It's clearly unfinished at the end. There's a bunch of unresolved plot elements. The ending's kind of abrupt, and the missions do repeat, so the game was supposed to have even more to it, but what we got, you know, it's not perfect. I don't know if I'd say it's the best Metal Gear Solid, but man, it really is a great time that I very much still think is worth it and worth the long length. And so here's a game that very much does not need an introduction, and that is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is a massive open world RPG that has so much to do and so many places to go, and just the main game alone is pretty long, especially if you do some of the side content that is very much worth it in my opinion. But then there's also 2 massive DLCs for it as well. Like, these DLCs are massive. The main game took me well over 60 hours to finish by itself, and then with the DLCs, oh, you're looking at over 100 hours. I mean, even if you just do the main story, you ignore all of the side content, you're still going to take easy 50 hours for the main game, probably another 20 or 30 for the DLCs. Like, there's just a lot to see here. According to How Long to Beat, if you just do the main story, you're looking at 51 hours, but I really don't think most people playing The Witcher 3 are playing this way. The game really incentivizes you to do even a little of the side activities, and unlike most games, the side activities are actually very good here. They're worth your time, and all of this just led to me playing a lot of this game. When I got into The Witcher 3, oh, it really hooked me, and I played this game for a few weeks straight. I only played this, and I didn't want to play anything else. I just thought about The Witcher 3 when I wasn't playing it. I was thinking about it. Like, yeah, it sunk its teeth into me deep. And one of the reasons it just kept me so engrossed was that it's so varied. You go to a couple different locations and the gameplay is really different. Like, those beginning areas, yeah, it's a good mix of like combat, hunts, and interacting with NPCs. And then you go to Novigrad and there's like almost no combat. Then you go to Skellige and you're like on the little boat exploring, and there's a lot to see. Like, it's incredibly varied. It keeps things interesting, and I just didn't really want it to end. If I included the DLC, this game would be way higher up on the list, but I am just talking about The Witcher 3 by itself. It took me well over 60 hours. I think it's going to take most people over 60 hours to finish this one, just because there's so much to it, but like a few other games on this list, yeah, very much is worth it. And so our next game is an interesting one. It's Assassin's Creed Valhalla. This is the only game on the list where I low-key regret going all the way through with this one, and it's the only game on this list where I wouldn't really say it's worth it for the long-ass length. Now, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I have a very good feeling that most people who play this game probably don't see it all the way to the end. I don't have any facts or statistics behind that, just based off of my own personal experience and feelings. I think that most people don't finish this game. It does feel quite endless at times. At times, the game doesn't even feel like it wants you to finish it. They just bombard you with stuff really from the get-go. This is the longest Ubisoft game. This is the longest Assassin's Creed I've ever played, and I think endless is a pretty great way to describe how this game feels. It feels like it just never is even close to a conclusion, and then it just kind of ends. I only did the main story in this game. I did a few side missions and went, no, this is not for me. This game is already long enough as is. I'm just going to play the main story, and it took me over 60 hours, nearly 70 hours to beat this game. I barely did any side content. According to howlongtobeat.com, 61 hours for the main story, nearly 100 hours for main and side, and then a completionist is 150. These numbers are just way too high. This game did not need to be this big or this long or drawn out, and I just don't really think it's worth it. While I think the game is good and an improvement over Odyssey, it just is too much of a grind, it takes too much of your time, and the quality just isn't there compared to some of the other games on here. And so yeah, this is really the only game on the list where I'm like, it's just not worth it. It's not good enough to be this long. It should have been shorter and it would have been a better game. And so our next game is a likely suspect for this list. It is Xenoblade Chronicles. Now I very much remember when Xenoblade Chronicles came out on the Wii, at least when it finally came over to the US, and people called it one of the longest games ever. And all these years later, yeah, it really is one of the longest games ever. There's a few sequels now to Xenoblade Chronicles that might be even longer, but I can't personally speak on those. The only one I've finished is the original game. I will also stress that I played the Switch version, which according to howlongtobeat.com actually finishes up a lot faster than the original game. Apparently the Wii game is about 70 hours long and the Switch version allegedly is 52. This is just for main story, but I did a bunch of the side content for Xenoblade Chronicles. It took me over 60 hours to finish this game. And like many other games on this list, it's a big, long, drawn-out adventure that sees Shulk and his friends really get involved in a lot of shit, to say the least. The story's really big and epic, the world is interesting, there's a bunch of lovable characters, the battle system is really in-depth, it's got a lot to it, and there's a reason it is so long. There's a ton of side content in this game as well. You can easily double, if not almost triple your game's length by doing all of the side content. There is so much that it's absurd. Is all of it good? No, I'm gonna say not all of it is good. I did a fair amount of it, but I was pretty done with it by the end. I was like, okay, this isn't all that great. But I'd much rather do the side content in this game than Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It felt more rewarding here, and you actually did get some good stuff from it. Like I said, Xenoblade is a series now, and apparently all of the games are just as long. I tried a little bit of X, didn't really like it. I've played a fair amount of 2 and 3, but I've never finished either of them. I've never even gotten halfway. They're just so daunting and intimidating, honestly, that I just usually move on to something else. But hey, it's pretty cool that this series has stayed consistent when it comes to the length. They're all just massive, epic journeys, and people absolutely love these games to death, especially the DLC for that third game. There's the DLC for these games that are crazy big too. This series is just going to take you a long ass time if you want to play through all of them, and that's not even including Xenogears or the Xenosaga games. Just one of the biggest series in gaming when it comes to length. It doesn't get much longer than this, but if you're really on the hunt for some big, long, epic RPGs, Xenoblade Chronicles is a very good one. I do love Shulk and all of his friends, and I enjoyed my time with it. And so here we got another JRPG. We have The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. Now this game is part of the Trails series, and despite being the first game in the Cold Steel series, it's like the fourth game in the Trails series, and something all of these games have in common, they're all some long ass games. Especially the Cold Steel series. These games are just really big, long, epic JRPGs with very long and drawn out stories with tons of characters, a lot of politics, a lot of world building, some of the best of any JRPG series, but it's really lengthy. I feel like the Cold Steel series is really when the Legend of Heroes series as a whole started gaining a lot more steam. It had been around before, but really with Cold Steel I feel like the series went from hyper niche to just niche. But the series shows no sign of stopping anytime soon. There's still a bunch of games they have planned, and I bet they're all super long as well. But Trails of Cold Steel 1, this was the first game I played in the Trails series, and I really didn't know what to expect. I had heard good things about it, but man, I really caught into this one as well. Like several other games, this was all I played for a week straight. I was really into it. Like, on the surface, it doesn't seem like it's all that different from plenty of other JRPGs. It's about basically high school students going to school and then going on expeditions and fighting monsters in some dark place, but the battle mechanics are really solid, the characters are great, the amount of political drama and just world building is phenomenal in this game. Like, everything is so fleshed out, it's crazy. And then the gameplay is more than solid enough to the point that, yeah, I went through this entire game. I played the PC version, which does have the speed up mechanic. I very much recommend, if you're going to play this game, to have the speed up where you just hold down right trigger and everything goes way faster. Like, even with that, it still took me well over 60 hours to finish this game. I didn't even do really any of the side content. I kind of just stuck to the main story because I was like, look, this game's long enough as is. The side content, it doesn't seem all that compelling. It adds more world building, but I was getting my fill with the main story already, and with all the speeding up, I had it on 4 times speed, by the way, where I held down right trigger a bunch. It still took me over 60 hours. If you aren't speeding up at all, oh, it's going to take you so long with this game. And then if you do any of the side content, you're probably looking at 80, 90 hours. If you want to do everything, yeah, over 100 hours. I know people that have done everything because they just loved every aspect of this game, and I really did enjoy it. Cold Steel 2 is not as long. It is a very long game. And then Cold Steel 3 seems to be about as long as this first one. I got about halfway through it and finally just said, look, these games are so long, it's going to take me forever. And unfortunately, I haven't gone back. Hopefully in the future, I do go back to these games. I mean, I really do like the Trails series. It's just, you know, man, there's so many other games that take up all my time and people want me to look at games and yada yada yada. Cold Steel, very long game, very much worth it, and it's not the most obvious pick for a list like this. And so our next game is another very likely suspect for this list, and that is Elden Ring. Like many other people, when Elden Ring came out in 2022, it really just sucked up my life for a few months. This was really almost all I played. Like, I love the Dark Souls games, I love Bloodborne, and this game, it really just felt like a dream come true. They just blew up Dark Souls to such an extreme level, and it was just so well done. I didn't want to do like anything else. I just wanted to play Elden Ring. The world is expertly designed. You'll want to go to every single location. All of the locations are so different from each other. Exploring every nook and cranny is totally worth it. The game is still difficult. It's not super hard, so you will be retrying a bit. And it just felt so incredibly rewarding no matter what you were doing, and I just put a ton of time into it. It took me over 70 hours to finish Elden Ring. I did a good amount of the side stuff, but I didn't do everything. I know people that have played through the game a few times now. They've done as much side stuff as they could, and they've put hundreds upon hundreds of hours into this game, and Elden Ring is absolutely one of those games you could put hundreds of hours into. It feels like every playthrough is going to be different. No two fights are going to go exactly the same, and if you told me all you played for like a year straight was Elden Ring, I'd totally believe you. It's a really good game with just a lot of stuff in it. According to how long to beat, it'll take about 60 hours if you just do the main story, and I don't know about that one. I feel like it's going to take a bit longer for most people, especially because it isn't always super obvious what the main story is, and if you just do even a little bit of exploring around, I think it's going to take a bit longer than that. This is one of those games where like it'll take some people like 50, 55 hours to beat, and it'll take some people like 80 or 90, and then it'll take some people 100 plus. Like, it just has a ton of different factors to it, especially because the game actually is difficult. And that can add up a lot of playtime, you know, just retrying areas and bosses. And it's one of those games where everyone has a pretty unique experience with it. Everyone's got a story to tell. Some people will tell you, oh yeah, I steamrolled it, I beat it in like 2 weekends. Other people, they'll spend months and months on it. And, you know, in my opinion, it just makes it all the more worth it to play Elden Ring. Add your story to the mix. Mine, I played it a few months straight. I struggled with a few fights, but I really just wanted to see as much as I could, try to do all the dungeons, fight all of the bosses, and it took me a good, yeah, like 70-ish hours, and I loved it, man. I really want to go back to Elden Ring. Super hyped for the DLC. I hope it's also massive. There's no way the DLC is not going to be awesome. Like, it's going to be a great time. I'm really excited for it, and this is very much one of those long-ass games that you'll love every minute of. And so our next game is clearly a bit more of a personal pick and is more dependent on how I played through the game, and that is Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Now, the Like a Dragon / Yakuza series doesn't really need much of an introduction on the channel. I love these games to death, and most of these games are pretty up there when it comes to the length. They're not like crazy long, but the RPGs, yeah, they're quite long. And this game, it really is the biggest of them all. This is easily the biggest Yakuza game with the most amount of stuff to do in it, especially the side content. It took me about 90 hours. Yes, 90 hours to finish this game, and the main reason was because I did like all of the side content. It's very rare in a game where I will do like all the side content. Even games where I love the side content like Witcher 3, I still didn't do everything. No, in Infinite Wealth, I did like everything. I almost went full completionist out here, and that's why it took me so long. I'm sure if you only do the main story, you ignore all the side stuff, yeah, you could probably finish this game in around 60 hours. How long to beat says 56 and a half. I'm a little doubtful on that, but if you do even a little bit of the side stuff, you're looking at 60, about 70 hours, and there is so much to do, and it's all so rewarding. It's so fun. It adds to the game so much. It really is worth it. I just love this game to pieces. I really do love all of the side content. It is all so good. The main story's excellent as well, but the side content, man, that really is why it took me so long with this game. Like, I also really took my time with it. I took my time doing all the Sujimon stuff on Dondoko Island. Like, I messed around on the island for probably hours on end, did all of the sub-stories. Like, I really tried to do as much as I possibly could with this game. Even with some of the other Yakuza games I really loved, I didn't do like every sub-story. Here though, I really wanted to do every single sub-story, and I just loved everything. I did basically everything except get all of your stats to max. That was a bit extreme, but even if you just stick to the main story, this is still a long-ass game. Again, very personal to me since I did like everything. I'm sure most people probably won't say that this is one of the longest games they've ever finished. They'll put it up there, but one of the very longest, I doubt it. Unless they did everything like me, then yeah, it really is one of the longest games I've ever finished. Could I have finished it way faster? Of course I could, but today's video is just my personal experience, and it's one of the longest games I've ever finished, and it's one of my favorite games of all time now. Easy. And so here's another game that doesn't need an introduction to the channel, and that is Baldur's Gate 3. This was easily the longest game I finished last year and one of the longest games I've ever finished. It took me about 100 hours to finish this game. I did play it in co-op, and we like really took our time with it. We wanted to see basically everything, try to do as much side stuff as possible, and oh, we absolutely loved it. But man, we were on this game for months. I started playing in August, and I think I finished it in like October. Like, we played this game for months on end, and oh, it was just an absolute blast. I'm sure if you're playing single player, it probably moves quite a bit faster, but we really did take our time with this one. According to howlongtobeat.com, if you just do the main story, it's around 65 hours, which is already pretty long, but most people who are doing the main or side, it says 109 hours. Yeah, that seems a bit more accurate. I think if you do really any of the side stuff, it's going to take you well over 70-80 hours with this game. There's really just a lot to it. And then the other thing is it's so replayable. Like, this game is crazy replayable. You can play through it 5 different times, and the way you'll approach certain scenarios will be completely different. Your background really matters, the type of character you have, the party members you have, a bunch of choices. All of these things really matter, and so you could play through this game 5-6 times, they'd all be really different, and you're looking at 500 plus hours with one game. Like Elden Ring, it's one of those games that people are just going to have their own story to tell because there's so many factors, and everyone's playthrough is just going to be so different. Like, I just love how many different ways you can go about this game. I'd play through this game 2 or 3 more times if I could, but I got plenty of other games to play, really long other games to play that I still need to finish. But man, Baldur's Gate 3 is so worth it. It's one of those games where I can go, yeah, it took me like 100 hours to finish this game. Months upon months of my time went to this game, and I loved it. By the time it was over, I was genuinely really sad. It was an emotional moment. I didn't want it to end. I was just loving it. And my partner was also very sad. It felt like the end of an era or something. Like, we just were having so much fun with this game. There was so much to love, and I'm clearly not alone in this sentiment. I have never seen a game just straight win like every single awards show. I mean, it was the best game of last year. I don't think any other game came even close. There were some good games, but Baldur's Gate 3, this game is unstoppable. It's one of the best games ever made. One of the longest games ever made, but ooh, so flipping good, it's not even funny. Alright, and the number 1 game on this list, the longest game I've ever finished, it's pretty obvious it's not just one game, it's really an entire franchise, and that's the Persona franchise. When you think of long-ass video games, one of the first games you probably think of is Persona, whether it's Persona 3, Persona 4, and of course Persona 5. And there's several different versions to these games as well, whether you're playing the original Persona 3, FES, Portable, Reload, Persona 4, Golden, Persona 5, Royal. All of them are stupidly long. Of them all, I think the longest is Persona 5 Royal, taking over 100 hours. Just for the main story alone, you're going to be playing these games a very long time. When you sign up to play a Persona game, you're signing up for a commitment, a long-ass commitment. Like, games just don't really get longer than the Persona series, and the reason they're so long is because there really is just that much to it. You live out every single day as a student going to high school, and you basically do an entire year. And then on top of this, there's a bunch of, just typical RPG gameplay, turn-based battles, some long dungeons. I mean, Persona 3, a majority of the game is just one long-ass dungeon, but Persona 4's got some long dungeons, so does Persona 5, and some of these battles are pretty drawn out. Some of them do take a while. You'll destroy hundreds, thousands of enemies in these games. And I wouldn't be surprised if you go over a few thousand lines of dialogue. It is not funny how long these games are. There is no jokes, there is no laughter, there is no hee-hee, there is no snickers. It is not funny. Your LMAOs can go somewhere else. These games are long and they're serious about being long. But despite that, these games are so good. These are some of the greatest games ever made. Persona 3, 4, and 5 are all fantastic as long as you're playing the latest version. Like, these games are so good. They are absolutely worth it, with some of the most lovable characters and worlds you'll ever find in a video game. The battle system is great, and it just gets better and better. And by the time you finally finish these games and see the end credits, it is so emotional. It's such a big deal. You're just on this long-ass journey, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it to pieces. If I could replay any of them again for the first time, it would be Persona 5. Man, this game, it just brought me to tears when I finally finished it. It was just such a big, epic journey, and Persona 6 is coming. I am certain it's coming in the next few years, and it's probably going to be as big as these games, and it's going to be so worth it. A majority of these games actually are worth it, and despite the long length, I think they are worth your time, and hopefully I introduced a few people to some really long-ass games. Probably not. These are all relatively well-known, but it was fun to just kind of ramble on some of the longest games I've ever finished. And so my question to you at the end is, what's the longest game you've ever finished that you are aware of at least? And if you made it to this part of the video, you're going to have to comment the secret code word. The secret code word today is lengthy. Take that how you will, but if you made it to this part of the video and comment that, you're going to get a little heart from me. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, whatever is closest to you. Thank you so much. Y'all are awesome. Have a good one. Bye-bye now.